We all know UFC fights have a tendency to get hot and heated, and that's kind of why we love them too. But this time around, it might just be getting a little bloody too. Following the news of the UFC fights lineup, the excitement and buzz has been positively palpable. There's this one fight in particular that caught the viewer's eye, and we're about to break it down for all of you. Let's get started. First up, let's start with the obvious. Nate Diaz vs. Khamzat Chimaev. In the midst of all the buzz around the fight, Nate Diaz and Khamzat Chimaev are taking the lead. The Nate Diaz vs. Khamzat Chimaev welterweight blockbuster has been in the works for the Ultimate Fighting Championship for a number of months, and it appears that both competitors have finally settled on a date and venue. Since the middle of April, Diaz has been asking for this fight, according to Zach Rosenfield, the fighter's agent, who spoke to ESPN. Nate Diaz and Khamzat Chimaev are to face off in a fight this season, the main event of UFC 279, which is set to take place on September 10th at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, has been verbally agreed upon by the two welterweight competitors. Despite the fact that there were a number of other possibilities and combinations at play, it now seems as though Diaz will finally face Chimaev in what will be the last match of his UFC contract. Diaz and Chimaev have long been rumored to want this fight, and it seems that his wish has finally been granted. The third-ranked welterweight in MMA Fighting's global rankings, Chimaev is unbeaten and looking for his sixth victory in the UFC after a thrilling fight-of-the-night victory against Gilbert Burns at UFC 273. On the other hand, Diaz has only triumphed once in the previous 6 years, defeating Anthony Pettis by a unanimous decision at UFC 241 in August 2019. We don't know about you guys, but it all seems like bets are off this season. Next up, let's find out what the pros have to say. The abrupt addition of one of the biggest fights on the promotion schedule sparked a lot of controversy in the mixed martial arts community. Following a highly publicized fight and promotional agreement discussions between Diaz and the UFC, the blatant mismatch has sparked quite the conversation online and among the MMA community. Let's see what they have to say. Starting off with the most famous and accurate remark, "This might be really ugly," by an American former professional mixed martial artist and amateur wrestler Ben Askren, who took to Twitter to share his views. Brett Okamoto, reporter for ESPN, shared some insight by sharing the fact that Khamzat Chimaev provided a comment about the fight to ESPN. The comment was translated from Swedish by his representative, Majdi Shamas. "I am going to handle Nate Diaz's funeral with the UFC. I mean, we don't know about you guys, but we're a teeny bit scared for Diaz right now." Bilal Muhammad, another UFC competitor, tweeted, "I hope Nate and Leon both win and ruin everyone's plans. And we can't help but laugh out loud. Wouldn't that be an unanticipated twist of fate? We hope Nate knows he has our support." Next up, could this fight be the last appearance of Nate Diaz in the UFC? The Californian fighter, 37, from Stockton, demanded an exit during a recent appearance on the MMA Hour. He put forward the demand for the UFC to find him a challenger for his last fight under his contract so that he could quit the organization, dropping hints that he had his eye on a potential boxing showdown with YouTuber Jake Paul. The UFC has now fulfilled that wish, but Diaz, a skilled boxer and black belt in jiu-jitsu with a professional record of 20 victories and 13 defeats, must now prepare to attempt to counter the smothering grappling of Sweden's Chimaev, who is undefeated in 11 professional fights and one of the most feared fighters in the promotion. Nate, who still expresses his distaste for the UFC's business practices, might make one final appearance at UFC 279 before disappearing for good. Promotions director Dana White disagrees with the Stockton Slugger's viewpoint on taking hostages, as might be expected. Even if Chimaev's victory at 170 pounds is unlikely to improve his standing, it will at least keep him occupied while the welterweight championship fight between champion Kamaru Usman and top contender Leon Edwards takes place at UFC 278 in Salt Lake City, Utah, the following month. Nate Diaz turned 37 in April, plummeting to 2013 after losing to Edwards at UFC 263 in June 2021 by unanimous decision. The champion of the Ultimate Fighter 5 suffered his second straight defeat, who has now dropped 3 of his last 4. Now, onto some other news that might interest you. First up, let's see what Jake Paul got into now. It seems as if every other day we come across some of Jake Paul's antics while scrolling social media, most of which we scoff at. Nevertheless, the young man has managed to make headlines yet again, and here's why. Hasim Rahman Jr. accused Team Jake Paul of using deception and outright bullying to entice him to sign for their August 6th pay-per-view headliner at Madison Square Garden. Rahman Jr. claimed on Monday's episode of the MMA Hour that Paul's team misled him by making it appear as if there was an interest in hiring him again as a sparring partner. Rahman claimed that after revealing information about his weight and training, Team Paul offered him a take-it-or-leave-it fight with Paul. He stated that Jake's coach called him and asked how much he weighs, how he felt about his last fight, what he's been doing in the gym, and how much he's been sparring. But he has been asked all this under the pretense that he would come in and spar Jake as a southpaw for the Anderson Silva fight. Rahman Jr., the son of former heavyweight boxing champion Hasim Rahman, considered his options and saw an opportunity in facing Paul, a two-time sparring partner and a popular target among experienced boxers, looking to expose the social media star turned pugilist. He claimed that despite requesting a few hours to consider his options, he was instead given an ultimatum. No, you have to respond within 45 minutes before the top of the hour or the offer's off and you'll never get the opportunity to fight Jake Paul again, he said of Team Paul's response. Rahman Jr., who is 12-1 in the ring, admitted that the money he received to fight Paul on August 6th was the most he'd ever made in professional boxing. However, it also came with some heavy strings wrapped around his waist. The contract, according to the 31-year-old boxer, demands 25% of his purse for every pound gained, with a 4-ounce allowance on the 200 pounds he must make at official weigh-ins and 214-pound limit at noon on fight night. He said a 4-pound overage could result in a $5,000 pay cut. Yikes! The sparring partner gambit was a dirty move, according to Rahman Jr., but you can't put anything past anybody in this business, he stated, that he intended to expose other unethical practices at the press conference for their fight before the gathering was called off early. Talk about dirty politics and sportsmanship, right? Moving on from these antics, let's take a look at the return of the Hidlay brothers. All-Americans, turned wrestling's favorite brothers, turned promoters, are back for the sequel to 2021's Wrangle in the Wild, Wrangle 2, a year after successfully putting on their first wrestling show. Trent and Hayden Hidlay are now, and likely forever, known as the two-headed monster that has anchored down the NC State wrestling lineup for the past half-decade. But after a month of planning, the two realized that they had a knack for promoting. With the new NCAA NIL rules in place, the Hidlays had just enough time to throw something together and hope for the best, instead of simply throwing something together. The two used every second of every hour to put on a show that even they were surprised by. Despite the huge success of Wrangle in the Wild, Wrangle 2 will be very different from last year's Showdown. Instead of watching a Hidlay vs. Hidlay match to round out the evening, Trent and Hayden are staying in the commentary booth to guide viewers through a main event that doesn't require a commentary change and features two exhausted, mismatched brothers squaring off. The last news on our radar is definitely Ayman Zahabi. Ayman Zahabi began looking forward to returning to the octagon just a few hours after knocking out Draco Rodriguez in the first round of their fight in February 2021. However, patience is a fickle game, isn't it? You are either exceptional at it or you ruin your own destiny by your intolerance. However, our man Zahabi has mastered it. Instead of making a quick return, the Montreal native has spent the last 16 months honing his craft so that when the time comes for him to finally walk again, he will be prepared. At long last, Zahabi returned to the ring earlier this July, facing off against Ultimate Fighter winner Ricky Tercios in an intriguing bantamweight matchup on Saturday night's preliminary card. With that, we're going to wrap up this video. How do you feel about the fight? Do you think the reactions were justified? Let us know your thoughts, and we'll see you all later. Bye.